In 2007, the UK Conservative Party coined a new term called Broken Britain. This term was used as a perceived decay in society under Gordon Brown's tenure, who was the Prime Minister at the time of the term's coinment. More on the term, the main point of contention that the Conservative Party had were working-class people, and case in point, roadmen. And while on the subject of the term's coinment, another film called Adulthood was released back in 2006. While definitely not the first of its kind, Adulthood managed to pave the way for many other UK hood films. But another genre that Adulthood managed to spawn was hoodie horror, which was essentially a retooling of the slasher genre, just replacing the killer with roadmen. Despite the success of Adulthood, however, the genre mostly died off around the early 2010s. But a film that came out during these wave of new hoodie films was Attack the Block. Released in 2011, the movie is about 5 roadmen who go up against an alien invasion. And while dealing with the alien invasion, they team up with one of the block's residents and also cross paths with a drug dealer who is out to kill them. When the film was released in cinemas, it didn't really do that spectacular at the box office. But as the stars of the film broke into mainstream attention, some people have looked back on this film and realized, hey, it's really good. And if I'm gonna be honest, I am one of these people. I admit it. And what I also want to admit is, Attack the Block's social commentary is more unique than you probably think. Not only is it a good film on its own because of its action, its soundtrack, its cinematography, its characters, its acting, pretty much everything that makes a movie good, you know? But in my opinion, the social commentary is probably why I think the film is more unique than other sci-fi films. It's gonna be a pretty long video, so strap yourselves in as we dissect the social commentary of Attack the Block. I think the best way to start this review is by talking about the characters. And starting off this section, let's talk about the 5 main boys. And as you can see on the screen, they appear to be wearing stereotypical roadman gear. And one other thing to point out is that most of the boys, except for Pest, are not Caucasian. This is a reference to the fact that when the Conservative Party used the term Broken Britain, they were more so pointing at these specific type of people. Another reference to Broken Britain within these characters is that most of the film takes place in a rundown council estate, which another part of Broken Britain was not only addressing the roadmen, but also addressing the environment that these people hanged out in, with the Conservatives honing in on the idea that all these teenagers ever did in life was just go around their area and partake in petty crime. And these beliefs of Broken Britain are put to the test in the film's opening scene, where it depicts the 5 main boys robbing a white woman at night. And if you start to take what I said in the video and apply it to this opening scene, you'll start to see some parallels that seem to oppose the idea of a Broken Britain. It applies the main points of contention for Broken Britain and applies it to this opening scene, where despite the 5 main boys being the protagonists, this opening scene depicts them as the antagonists and the white woman as a poor victim. To me, it's an important point to bring up because whenever I hear about negative discussion about the movie, it always points to about the 5 main characters being unlikable, with most pointing to the opening scene as a reason why the main characters are unlikable. And while I certainly don't agree with these criticisms, it's just made me realize how much the opening scene is much more powerful, because the opening scene is meant to assert what most people believe about these types of people, that all of them are no-life monsters who only do more harm than good to their community. And so when the film switches gears to make the 5 main characters more of the protagonists, that's when it becomes a little more interesting. With a film like this that depicts people with antagonistic qualities being the protagonist, most people can assume that some form of redemption is gonna happen in the end. And the movie kinda does this. But that's the thing. To me, the film has a very interesting way on how it depicts its grey side of morality, as in the ending when Moses defeats all of the aliens but still gets arrested, the people who take it at face value will assume that this is the movie's way of closing Moses' redemption arc. But if you really think about it more, the movie doesn't really have any redemption arcs at all. But if it doesn't have a redemption arc, how is the ending still so impactful? Well, it has to do with the way the film makes you want to care more about the 5 main characters. In a scene after the opening, the white woman, whose name is Sam, is sitting in her flat with another old lady who lives around the council estate. And during this scene, the old lady makes a mention about teenage delinquency, with her dialogue ending with calling these types of teenagers fucking monsters, which gets reiterated by Sam before the scene ends. It's very clear from what I'm gonna say in this section that the key word here is monsters, and more specifically, no-life monsters with absolutely no empathy or sympathy. You're not supposed to see the 5 main protagonists as petty kids. You're supposed to see them as the absolute lowest scum on the earth. So when the film makes them more of the protagonists, it's meant to make you angry because it's actually challenging your beliefs. It regurgitates what you want to hear when you hear these types of people, and then as the film goes along, it immediately smacks it back in your face. And getting back on the topic of the characters, one moment in the film around the end really sticks out to me. It's around the end of the film, and it's when all the main characters are in a weed room, hiding from the aliens. And during the scene, Moses starts self-criticizing himself for his actions. And one of the things he tries to do is to apologize to Sam, saying that if they didn't know that she lived in a council estate, they wouldn't have robbed her. And obviously, the apology is stupid. But that's one of the main components as to why the ending is still so powerful, even though the characters don't get any redemption whatsoever. Sadly, all the nitty-gritty stuff I want to say will be said in the next section, but to basically sum it all up, it really shows you a new perspective on these types of people. But before we get into the next section, there's just one thing I want to talk about, and that is the character of Sam. Like the protagonist, Sam is introduced as a caricature of something, but instead of being presented as an antagonistic caricature, she's more presented as innocent. And the film plays up this caricature for some time, until it gets to this moment.
Hey, you gonna thank us for saving your life?
You fucking hero.
And just like what I've mentioned with the main protagonist, that's when you start to see a new side to Sam that you never saw before. While it doesn't completely change her character from a victim to a villain, it shows a new side to her personality by having a little bit of snark and also knowing when to stand her ground when she feels she needs to. The reason why I want to talk about this is that it almost parallels the way you think about the main protagonist. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but it uses the same bait and switch method that I talked about with the protagonist, where it regurgitates your beliefs in the opening scene and then it immediately throws it back at your face. And it's weird how almost parallel it is to the protagonist, but no one seemed to have actually picked it up when reviewing the movie. Do I stand out? Well, whatever it may be, let's just move on to the next section, cause oh boy, I've got a lot to talk about. Now that we've got the character section out of the way, let's move on to the other component as to why I think Attack the Block is unique, and that is the intricacies within the plot. And I think the best way I can start this section off is by talking about how the film views gang culture. As we know that the 5 main protagonists are roadmen, it seems out of the ordinary for the film to not include any commentary related to gang culture. And social commentary it does, not only with its protagonists, but 2 other characters, Probs and Mayhem and Hi-Hats. Probs and Mayhem are 2 young boys, desperate to be validated by the 5 main protagonists. And Hi-Hats is the main drug lord in the council estate, who eventually becomes the second villain later down the movie. What's interesting to know about these characters is that if you put them on the progressive line, you kinda start to see something a little more darker, we should say. The progression line links back to Moses. Mayhem is supposed to represent Moses when he was young, the Moses today is supposed to represent where he is now, and Hi-Hats is meant to represent Moses in the future. What makes this line even scarier is around the end of the movie when we finally see what Moses' home life is, where we see Sam looking around the dire state of the flat as we come to realize that Moses is literally living by himself and he's only 15. With this in mind, it not only shows you how terrible Moses' home life is, but also shows you how truly evil Hi-Hats is. As at the start of the movie, Hi-Hats employs Moses to be one of his drug mules, and while he gives Moses the pack, he also uses carefully constructed language to make Moses believe that he is by his side. And that's the scary thing about Moses, is because if we're meant to believe that Hi-Hats probably knows about Moses' terrible home life, then by definition he's pretty much grooming him. He's enabling Moses to go down this self-destructive path, manipulating him about the wonders of being a drug mule even though it's clearly not the right path for Moses to take. Especially later in the movie when Hi-Hats tries to kill Moses all because of a simple misunderstanding. And as I said previously about Hi-Hats being a metaphor for Moses' later adult life, and considering the fact that I mentioned that this film has no true redemption arc for Moses, taking it all in and you have a movie that's honestly more depressing than it may look. While Moses is not exactly a flawless goody two-shoes, he's not exactly a monster either. He's just a kid with a terrible sense of direction in life, being enabled by people older than him to continue going down this self-destructive path. And it's not that Moses is the only victim here. All his other friends are susceptible to the same thing, just not as severe as Moses. And the best way I can say it on what I mean is in the scene where they're hiding out in one of their friends' flats. This is also a scene where I believe this is where the main character's unlikability is put to the test. In this scene, the owners of the flat, the girls that were briefly seen in the intro, learn about the 5 main protagonists robbing the woman. And as to be expected, they immediately call out their behavior. And the boys try to remedy the situation in the worst way possible, constantly coming up with dumb excuses one after the other. But if you actually start to listen to the boys' excuses, you also start to see another side to the film's depiction of gang culture. And this is linking back to what I said about Moses earlier in this section, in that the boys have completely normalized this behavior and don't fully understand the dangers of it. This is egregious with what Pez says in this scene, where he says while it was obviously bad to mug Sam, they're now allies, so it's all completely fine, right?
5 of you and a knife against 1 woman. Fuck off.
To me, what makes this a pivotal scene in the movie is because of how much it doesn't pull its punches when it comes to the characters' unlikability. It recognizes that the characters are fucked up and it absolutely commits to that, while also at the same time providing some unique social commentary, especially when Jerome tries to justify the use of the blade, saying that it was to get it over with quickly and that they were more scared than Sam was during the mugging, which intertwines with the first section telling how the movie makes us want to feel that all these kids are just monsters. And if you really think about it, you can also understand why Moses is talking much faster than he is in the opening scene. It's meant to showcase that the kids do have some form of empathy, it's just that they have it all twisted. They understand the risks and danger, but they continue to do it because around them it's just normalized. They want to be seen as cool, not only by the adults, but also the other kids around the block. And considering most of these kids are well into their teenage years, there's absolutely no chance of them stopping this behavior because it's just become normal to them. And that's what I think makes the movie unique. It takes a centrist view on gang culture. It doesn't exactly condone this behavior, but it also doesn't exactly condemn it at the same time. It shows you almost all of the possible reasons why kids want to become roadmen. Not only that they want to be seen as cool, but also other environmental reasons like the area they live in is a factor as to why they want to emulate this style. But it also shows you that just because people live in a tower block doesn't mean they're instantly going to become roadmen in the future. And in all honesty, all of it really boils down to is just humans being humans. Some humans have a good path in life, some humans have a bad path in life, but all in all, they're complex in nature. And with the film not having a redemption arc for the protagonist, it just proves my point further. And speaking of that aforementioned scene, there is one piece of dialogue that Moses says in this scene that really strikes me.
You know what I reckon, yeah? I reckon the Fed sent them anyway. Government probably bred those creatures to kill black boys. First they sent drugs to the ends, then they sent guns. Now they sent monsters to get us. They don't care, man. We ain't killing each other fast enough, so they decided to speed up the process.
Now, just like the previous pieces of dialogue that I've just said, this one is very stupid at face value. But when you actually look into it more and start to connect it with the film's themes, it opens up a whole new can of worms. Throughout the film, there are only 3 times police are shown, 2 of which are integral to the plot. The first time is when 2 police officers arrest Moses before getting killed by one of the aliens. And the second time is at the film's ending where most of the protagonists are arrested. And what's interesting to know is that in these specific scenes, the police are shown in a negative light, being seen as incompetent hindrances for the few times we see them. But why are the police portrayed in this way? Well, it's a very simple answer. It's more ingrained in real life. Throughout the film, the main important characters in this story seem to be the only one who knows about the aliens. And we don't see neither the police fighting them or even any other tenants fighting the aliens as a whole. And even in the aforementioned scene, one of the characters says this.
Please, what kind of alien, out of all the places in the whole wide world, would invade some shitty council estate in South London?
And the last words she says are the keywords, shitty council estate. And the best way I can talk about what I need to talk about is talking about Grenfell Tower. For those unaware, the Grenfell Tower was a tower block in North Kensington, London, that on June 14th, 2017 was destroyed in a deadly fire that caused 72 deaths. The reason this links back to Attack the Block is the reasons why the protagonists only know about the aliens and no one else. And the simple answer is, nobody cares. On the topic of Grenfell, there were many fire safety concerns that were raised, but none of them were addressed. And it only took this severe burn-in to get the ball rolling about the safety concerns. The parallels between Grenfell Tower and Attack the Block is present with the police in the film, in that they wouldn't care about the things in motion, but they would heavily care about the aftermath of it. And even then, they only focus on the two officers and not anyone else that was killed during the movie. And that's another aspect as to why I like this movie, on how it's not afraid to pull its punches against important people. It offers a subtle commentary dig on councils for neglecting these types of estates, while also criticizing the police for only caring about the superficial things and not the big picture. And a bigger picture I want to talk about is the way the police treat the 5 main protagonists. The 2 times the 5 main protagonists have any connection to the police is in the aforementioned scenes of Moses being arrested and the ending scene. Outside of the critique on the police system, there's nothing really to write home about, except for 2 major things. In 2 different moments of these 2 scenes, 2 different officers snarkily deride the boys.
Not so tough now, are we, fella?
Don't let them intimidate you, miss.
But considering the protagonists are technically criminals and the film knows this, why am I bringing this up? Well, it's what I talked about with Grenfell, on how this movie parallels real life. And in this specific case, it's George Floyd. I think most people watching this video are probably aware of what happened with George Floyd, on how he was unfairly killed by fatal asphyxiation by Derek Chauvin over a counterfeit dollar bill. But the thing about George Floyd was, he had a very long criminal history. But even though George Floyd was a criminal, why was he still the face of BLM? And the simple answer was, while George Floyd is a criminal, he was unfairly punished by the police. And the George Floyd parallels are present in the movie when the police apprehend the protagonists. When the protagonists are shown to be arrested, the police seem to use excessive force when trying to deal with them, especially when they slam Moses onto the concrete road when he tries running away. And this is where I think the movie becomes a little interesting, and how the police are portrayed, how the protagonists see them. They don't see them as protectors of the town. They see them as people in power who unfairly judge them, a sentiment that is repeated by Pest in the aforementioned scene in the flat. And the speech that Moses gives about why the aliens came to attack is another important thing to mention, because while it is a stupid speech at face value, considering what we saw previously, it's still hard to understand why Moses has this sentiment, especially in the end where all of them are arrested and all the blame is put on them. And that's another aspect of the movie and why I feel like it still holds up very well. With things like George Floyd and Grenfell Tower, it unexpectedly parallels real life in more ways than the writer probably imagined. And that is the ending to my analysis of Attack the Block. And before I wrap up this video, I heavily emphasize you go watch this movie. No ifs, no buts, just please.